lesson on validity and reliability.
Okay, so first, we're going to start off with 2 warm-up questions. So everybody in your journal, first I want you to tell me something fun that you guys did this weekend. And then once you guys are done with that, I want you to think about a test that you've taken in the past and think, in your opinion, was it valid and reliable, and explain why not. And in probably 5 minutes or so, we're going to talk about it and get into the lesson.
And even though you might not know, validity and reliability in assessment, just try and think of a test that might have been.
Right, really quick. And then does anybody want to share something fun that they did this past weekend? Yep.
I went to a Little Darky concert at Anthology in Rochester.
Oh, wow.
Sick.
Yeah.
And then about a test that you've taken in the past, do you think it was valid and reliable?
I think they're valid and reliable. It's just very repetitive. There's a lot of paper and pen tests, I feel like, in the high school, and they mostly just have like a multiple choice section and a reading and writing section, and that's about it. And if they do switch it up, it's like a presentation / project that they put like very little original thought into. So I think just the diversity needs to increase.
Yeah, that's a good opinion. Anybody want to share next?
I kind of said like it is reliable because it usually covered what we learned in class. Like I think there was like only a couple tests in my life that I was like, oh, like I don't even like remember going over this. So.
And then something fun you did this weekend?
I went to Brockport and visited my friend.
I think I mentioned I was on the train visiting an old friend out in New York City. So having an operation, so I went there. It was less fun, but we had a good time. I can't think of a test that I know was invalid, although I think all of them just take the reason some tests are invalid, that you get material that the teacher didn't really teach right now. You go over. But my memory's not as good as some people's.
You want to go? Yeah, that's a really helpful strategy, the practice tests can go a long way. Mr. Q, did you do anything fun this weekend?
We had an inter squad scrimmage on Saturday. That was pretty fun. Did you do anything fun this weekend?
Played soccer game at Alfred, so it was a good time.
Did you win?
No.
Oh.
It wasn't bad, it was, we lost 2-0, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't like a blowout.
The wind's coming.
That's right, it is coming tomorrow.
All right, let's start digging into some of the heavier material we got for today. So, I know that you guys skimmed some of the textbook chapter 4 to learn a little bit about validity and reliability. So, I think we're going to start with the important question of why does validity and reliability matter, and why is it important in assessment specifically. I think the big thing here, that our biggest takeaway is, without these two concepts, or a combination of these two concepts, no assessment would give results that can be referred to. So, like if you look back through an assessment that's invalid or unreliable, the results essentially just go out the window. There's a lot of ups and downs in there where you can't really use them to their full potential. And then to help the students benefit, a valid and reliable assessment is going to help students give accurate answers on an assessment, and it's going to help a teacher or an educator better cater their lessons to a student to help the student succeed.
So, with validity and reliability, that guarantees three things for a test. That means it's going to be fair, trustworthy, and accurate. So as long as we have those three things, we can have a fair assessment. That'll help. It also helps students, gives the learning help that they need. And valid and reliable tests really helps teachers. It gives you that self-evaluation. Because if you're not having reliable self-evaluation, you don't know what you can be doing better as a teacher.
So defining validity. Validity of an assessment can be tested by just asking one simple question. And that question is, does the assessment measure what it's intended to measure? I know during our warm-up question, Autumn kind of hit the nail on the head right there and said that she hasn't really taken an exam for a certain class where the content doesn't line up with what's supposed to be tested. That's really what validity boils down to, is just making sure that the content on an assessment can be traced back to what the assessment is actually for. And so the example that we provided was like a math test that has a lot of reading comprehension items, or like long word problems with like tricky grammar or something, would be considered an invalid assessment for measuring the actual mathematical ability of a student, because it boils down to how well a student can actually understand the question.
Validity at its surface is a pretty simple concept. We'll dive into it a little bit more in the next couple slides to see the different kinds of it. But with validity, it ensures that test scores are meaningful and accurate, and that's the biggest thing. You know, without validity, you can't have reliability.
So our different types of validity, content validity. Question really here is, are the items being tested in line with the objectives of instruction? And then construct validity, does the assessment truly capture the skill being tested? And then criterion validity, does the performance correlate with another measure?
So I'll give some examples for each of the three of these. With content validity, it's making sure the assessment's content is a good sample of the knowledge being taught. So if you're only testing for a certain part of the lesson that you're teaching, you're not going to get a true understanding of what your students are learning. For example, if I only teach 40%, or if I only test on 40% of the sample that I taught, they're only going to remember 40%, so showing that assessment is the best way to help students learn. So there's a huge learning gap there if you're not making sure that your content validity is set. With construct validity, does the assessment truly capture the skill being tested? That has to do, oh yeah, that's like your in-task goals, state learning assessments. They want to make sure that you're hitting those. If you're not hitting your goals, you're not helping students learn as effectively as they should be. And then criterion validity, this is kind of what teachers use as the gold standard. You know, what can you use outside the classroom, not outside of your classroom, that you can line up with your tests to make sure that it's hitting all the standards. It's why so many colleges use the SATs. It has very high criterion validity.
Okay, moving on to reliability. So reliability is the consistency of measurement in an assessment. A big key word here that you can connect to reliability is reliability equals dependability. You're really asking yourself, how dependable is an assessment? How dependable is an assessment when it turns into going from reliability to validity? So a question here that connects back to this is, if the same student takes a test under similar conditions, would the results be similar? And that just goes down to like how reliable a test really is to help students.
Yeah, another great word for reliability is stability, making sure that you're always going to have similar results. You know, there's always going to be outliers no matter what you do. The market's always going to prove to be 12%, even though there's outliers. So,
Now our different types of reliability. We have our test retest, which is our stability over time. This goes back to our previous example of if you have the same student take test under similar circumstances, will the results be the same? Then our alternate forms, consistency between different versions of the test. Then our internal consistency, do all items measure the same concept? And then our inter-rater reliability, do different scores give consistent ratings?
so just to fly back again, test retest, it's making sure that your scores are reliable and consistent. A good way to assess the test retest is have your students take an assessment, wait a short period of time, make sure that they still know the content, have them take it again. If your scores are similar, that means students are at least learning something and it's a reliable test and it covers test retests. Alternate forms, they are similar, but they are different nonetheless. Again, it goes back to what Elijah was talking about with the practice tests. They're getting that first content, they're seeing it the first time, then when comes time for the real test, they're ready for it, they've seen it before, and they know how to handle it. Internal consistency was my next one. There's a formula in the textbook called the Kuder-Richardson 20, and I'll draw it out for you, but it's long, so don't feel like you have to memorize it or anything. It has to do with high internal consistency. It means that your questions are measuring the same broader concept. It means that your test is more reliable. So this one is different questions that fall under the same concept. And the last one, inter-rater reliability. Again, those tests that you took in high school, a lot of paper and pencil, multiple choice, they're always going to have a correlation of 1. You know, there's not really a lot of variability for your rater to give you different scores.
And now our relationship between validity and reliability. How do these two connect to each other? So the big thing here is a test can be reliable but not valid. A test cannot be valid unless it's reliable. That's a little tricky to remember. It's kind of similar to the square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square. It can get a little confusing. But because of this, validity is much more important, but both are needed to give a proper assessment. Now our threats to validity and reliability. A poorly written item on a test can contribute to invalidity and being unreliable. Again, this goes back to our math exam with a lot of reading comprehension items. Creates a invalid exam. Bias in content and scoring can also contribute. Inconsistent testing conditions. And then using results of assessments for incorrect purposes.
So the threats to validity and reliability, it's very interesting to look back at them because you can tie them all with different parts of reliability. So for example, poorly written tests, if you did a test retest scenario, you would see, like a question that you might have changed, that question will get answered right the second time. So that's how you know that's a poorly written item on the test, and then you should swap it out. Bias in content and scoring, that's going to affect inter-rater reliability.